Lisa Daly and Lori Goodwin are the Recovering Preacher's Kids. Sit back and relax as they have an unfiltered conversation because let's face it, somebody's just got to say it. Welcome back to the Recovering Preacher's Kids podcast. We are really excited for y'all to join us today. It is our very first time having a guest. So I would like to introduce all of y'all to my daughter, Kristina Marcus. We laugh and God love her. We grew up together. I had her when I was 18. And so when you see the little memes about your first child, you know, it's special because they were your ride or die. They saw you grow up, the stories that this woman could tell you. And I have shared often about how I always felt that I was a terrible mother. And I struggled greatly when Kristina and her brother were growing up because I loved them very, very much, but I didn't like them a lot of days. And I would often find myself like going to the bathroom longer or taking longer baths or, you know, going to the store and making it take a little longer. And I just always thought there was something wrong with me. And so as Kristina began to have children, she has my 4 grandbabies, and she began to share with me about how much she loved them, but how sometimes they drive her crazy. And I started being like, there's nothing wrong with me. And so it kind of opened a conversation between me and Kristina over the past 8 years. And then me and Lisa started talking about it. And we were like, you know, it's really not talked about in the church that you love your kids so much, because what we see are people coming to church and they're all in matchy clothes, which I think is precious. But I was always like, my kid has shown up in pajamas, you know? And so especially in a culture where everything you see is perfect. Kristina, you were so open and honest about the feralness of your kids and how you are trying to raise children without breaking their spirit and also raising them to be warriors for the kingdom. And so that's why we had Kristina on today, because I think she's got a lot of wisdom she can share with us. She loves the Lord. She loves her kids, but she does hide from them from time to time.
For better or for worse.
For worse. So I guess my first question is, when did you begin to realize that, hey, there's nothing wrong with me? Every mother feels this way. There's nothing wrong with me.
It probably took till about the third one. And I think that was only because my first 2 are boys. And so I think I chalked a lot of it up to like, okay, it's just wild boys. They're just boys. Like, I'm just trying to survive in a home full of boys. And then I think the idea would be, oh, she came and she was precious and it made you feel like you were doing something right. But that girl's the most feral one of all. And I love her for it. But it just started making me really think and wonder, like, God, why would you give me this many? And then a 4th one came. But why would you also give me these? Like, they all have such strong personalities, all of them. And I'm like, I couldn't have got a little feather in the bush. Like, what are we? Like, not a one. And so it really started to make me be like, why would you pick me for all of these extremely strong-willed kids? Like, I don't feel like I'm equipped to handle this. And the more I started to then look at, like, why have you chosen this or done this, and read more in the Word, I started to realize, probably when she was about 6 or 7 months old, like, the reason it felt so hard is my entire mindset and the way I looked at all of it was a little askew in what my initial preconceived ideas into what children were and like what my purpose was supposed to be with them.
So I'm kind of blown away by that statement because, well, I was a kid when I had kids. So I came into it with no idea what I was doing. What do you mean you kind of came into it with a skewed view?
That's what I was fixing to ask.
Well, I almost had this idea that, like, it is this beautiful, wonderful opportunity, and you have like a rough day here and maybe a really bad moment, or your kid really struggles with something. So these few weeks are hard, but the majority of it is like just the solace of being around these beautiful children.
Glitter and
And you
rainbows.
might be like, what? Why? But it was just like, oh, babies are so precious. And oh, that thing that kid toddler at church does is so adorable. And sometimes they stomp their foot, but for the most part, they're amazing.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
And
The
I
way-
don't know why you would think. And I'm a teacher too, so to have a teacher be like, they're all just wonderful. But I think it's because I was always able to give them back.
I think that's the answer, and I think
Oh,
that's why
no,
now
it's
as grandparents, I'm looking back from now and right how as a mother and versus a grandmother, and that's where you said it. I can give them back. I I can love on them, I can spoil them, and I can just give them back. But it's not my responsibility to make them
Functioning humans.
right. It's not my
like,
responsibility. Here you go. My job is I just love them and I send them back. So I can see how that does. Yeah.
and if nobody lets you in on the secret, you're like, what has happened? Like, there was a time with one of mine, I jokingly told my husband, like, I think this one's broken. Like, do we have the receipt to return this one? Like, we need a refund. This was a little more than we bargained for.
So, what, I mean, okay, so here I am, a preacher's kid, raised in a preacher's home, and it is well established that I am the feral of the two of us. And so I was very rebellious, but I did not become a believer until you were about 14 or 15 years old. So Kristina grew up with very rebellious, wild parents, and then literally went to bed one night and woke up the next day in a religious household. And we have had to do a lot of therapy and have a lot of hard, honest conversations of apologies and things like that, because her dad and I did not handle that well. We didn't realize how traumatic that was to her. But her brother was about 10. And so his memories are so different than hers. And he was raised more in a telling him about the word and things like that as a younger child than Kristina was. And it's funny to see them now as adults and how their lives have gone. But what has God shown you that like your children are given to you? Because I'm going to just be straight up and honest. Like, I felt like, okay, that's just what you do. You have kids and you raise them. And my goal was to make sure that, y'all weren't living in my basement at 30 years old with no career, you know what I'm saying? I mean, in my mind,
you stayed out of jail.
Keep them
yes,
functioning, contributing members of society. That's the goal.
That is what I think all of us. And it's just not you. I think that was me too. That was my mindset of what our responsibility was as parents.
Yes. So you shared with us before we started recording what God revealed to you, what your purpose was as their mom. And I kind of think that when you share this, it's almost like the secret sauce, because when you told me that, I like had a flashback to y'all's childhood, like, oh, wow. Thank you, Lord, for having your hand over them, because they turned out so well, because I did not do that right. So what has God revealed to you, kind of what the secret sauce is about our kids?
For me, I felt like the oh my gosh moment was that my complete thought process and like heart posture towards it was wrong. And that, I'm not trying to make a contributing member to society. I'm trying to disciple this tiny human. I mean, this is a tiny little child of God. And I think back to, Matthew 18 when it's like, go and make disciples. Well, I like literally made some. Like, I've made 4 little kids, and my responsibility is now to take what I have made and create a disciple. And
Mhm.
so it's not that, oh, now once they get older, we start teaching them these ideals and values. I mean, literally from a small little kid and toddler, they're supposed to be given these values because my job is to train them up, and my goal is to do the best I can to make them a disciple, just like anyone else in the world. At the end of the day, then that's their choice to carry out their relationship with God, but my job is to train them up.
I'm speechless.
She's so wise.
I
She's so
know.
wise. Where was she back when we were trying to...
I was just going to say in the 90s, because I mean,
Don't be telling people how old I am in the 90s.
I can remember Kristina was the easiest child, and her brother was as feral as they came.
As children.
As children. And so I look back as you said that, and I think of all the times that I got it wrong. And so what would your advice be to someone listening and they're like, okay, so my kids are older, maybe they're teenagers, or maybe they're late elementary school, and they're like, I love Jesus, but I've never looked at the fact that I gave birth to these disciples. So what would your advice be to them, that if that's their revelation today, how do they move forward?
I think for me, a lot of that has to do with, just like as you become a believer. My oldest son accepted God into his life and has stated he wants to, follow Christ at a very young age, which was a little difficult for me at first because I didn't do that until I was almost 20 years old. And so I initially became a little panicked of like, but you don't, how much can you really know and understand at 7 years old to be able to make that decision? So in my mind, almost like, you're supposed to wait till you're bigger. Well, you don't really get everything yet. And so it took me some time, because in my mind, almost you needed to be older. Like I was it's supposed to wait till you're bigger. And then that revelation that like, I'm discipling you at 1 years old on why you're supposed to share is because we're supposed to love each other the way God loves us. And that's why I want you to share, not just because I want you to be a civil human being. And so to me, it's, you can't do anything about what age you were once you've come to realize that, or what age your kid is once you've come to realize that. But at the end of the day, once you see that, and if you accept that, like, yes, that's what I'm called to do to humanity. It just so happened I birthed a few of them I was supposed to do that with as well. Is then okay, then from wherever you are, your responsibility is discipling your child by teaching them about God and how you're modeling a Christ-like life, and you're going to guide them throughout spiritual growth, because your hope is that as they get older, or as you instill things in them, they're going to then get a heart posture to live that out to the best of their ability. So all you're doing then is, I'm going to live it out to the best of my ability to show you how to pick it up. And hopefully then, to me, I got some solace of, maybe then he'll be a few steps ahead of me because he was 7 and I was 19.
Right.
Well, listening to you talk, and I'm thinking the difference between some, I guess, in the generation in the church now versus us is I really think that is the shift, and more seeing the view of discipleship. I mean, we've always all talked about the Shema in Deuteronomy 6, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. And, you're to, in verse 7, impress them on your children, as you've been talking. I've been thinking about that. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Well, for us, or for me, from the 80s and 90s, it was more or less talk about it as you go. As okay, we're going to go Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. If you have a children's or a youth thing, that's where you're supposed to be. You go to every Bible school, Bible study, you go, 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 go. That was kind of the impression of talk about it and walk about with it. And what you're talking about, and what I'm starting to see the change a little bit, is that's the farthest thing of what I think Deuteronomy's talking about here. It is
That's
basically what you're
supplemental.
saying. Huh?
I said that's
That's,
supplemental.
yeah. I mean, the whole purpose of that is exactly what you're doing when you use the example of sharing. You do it because you want to show love for someone, not because I told you to. And that's where I feel like you and Lori, I mean, me and Lori, with us, it was you share because I told you so.
Yes.
Or you don't lie. Well, I'm teaching you the right thing. You don't lie because you're not supposed to lie, but it wasn't about, well, God wants honesty or whatever. So, I mean, I think there's the little bit of the shift, and I think, not that I want to say we had it all wrong or the church had it all wrong, but I think we've put too much of, oh, well, the only way you're going to train up a child is they have to be there Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, in every activity. But they spend most of the time in the home.
Well, do you feel like we are also, I think that now this will show our age. Anybody out there remember training union on Sunday nights? It was a class, like you had Sunday school Sunday mornings and you had training union on Sunday nights.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
But we weren't really discipled. That was not really a thing when we grew up in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. There just wasn't a lot of, or there wasn't for us. Let me just say that. Maybe there was somewhere in the country, but not in the little bitty towns we were in. And so I feel like right now the church is doing a great job of offering disciple classes. Like we have women's Bible studies. We have our life group / Sunday school classes, I think, are more in depth now. It's not just like this book and you just read this lesson. It's almost like you're diving into the word. And I think all of those things are wonderful because those of us who are undiscipled are now kind of being discipled. But do you see, as a young mother, a pattern of people who are going to the Bible studies, they are being discipled without realizing? Because there's a lady in our church that she describes discipleship like a ladder. Is you're on a rung and there's someone above you that you're reaching up to, but in the same turn, if you turn behind you, there's somebody below you and you've got your other hand out to them, pulling them up. And she's like, that's how discipleship works. So the question I'm trying to get to is, do you feel like the young mothers right now are on the ladder and they're so thirsty for God that they're reaching up, but they're forgetting that their kids are behind them and they need to reach that hand down and pull their kids up? Do you feel like there's more focus on the parents getting discipled, but yet they're not doing the same with their children? Am I making sense the question I'm asking?
I feel like it, and I think some of it is either a mom wants to, but she's like, I'm barely even discipled myself, so how I'm completely unequipped to do this to a child. Oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing, so how am I supposed to disciple them? I don't even know where to start. Or you have that idea of, well, that's what the Sunday school class is for, and it's going to get handled there, not necessarily realizing that that's just like a nice little boost where somebody else is telling your kid that, but that main bread comes from what you're doing with them in their home. And I think the hard thing with that is the idea that the fear of I'm trying to get it right. So I think the only way to get it right is to have somebody in my mind more qualified to do it instead of me.
I can understand that, and I can kind of sympathize with that. I know that when, like I talked a few minutes ago, like about you going to bed one night with living with feral parents and waking up to followers of Christ, you know, I didn't, even though I grew up in the church and grew up with a father as a pastor, I did not know how to handle that and felt very ill equipped. And I'm thinking, why is this child rebelling? And it took therapy and years for me to look back with, oh, I completely understand what was happening then. You know, I'm a slow learner. God love her, you know. And so for a mom who is in that position where she does feel ill-equipped, or she's looking back and maybe she's going, oh, I'm beginning to understand now. Is there a specific book of the Bible, or is there a specific Bible study, or is there something, I guess, like because I'm the kind of person that I say all the time, like, if I just had a list of all the rules, or you tell me what to go do, a book to read, I could go do it. And I'm not asking you to, like, what is the secret sauce to fix this? But if someone came to you as a mom and was like, what is a book of the Bible, or what is a Bible study? Is there anything you can direct me to get me on the right path? What would you tell them? Do you have a specific book or Bible verse, or I don't know, am I?
Yeah, well, I think you're gonna be like, ugh, in the answer that my answer is I don't have anything specific, but only because as I started to go, okay, God, you gave them to me and I don't know why, so let me figure this out, and I started looking at stuff. You do have very specific things that speak towards parenthood and how we're supposed to be with our children. But when I had the revelation that my interaction with my children is supposed to be this light to a fallen world of God and the way he interacts with his children, to me, it's like it's the whole book. The way God comes after his people and loves his people and continually reaches out towards them is how we're supposed to be with our own. And they're supposed to be disciplined. I mean, there's a lot of that in there. But the way that God comes after us and comes along and teaches us through everything we mess up and do wrong, that is how we're supposed to do it with our kids. And I mean, yes, I believe like that is supposed to be parallel, but also having the humanity of telling your kid, but I'm still human. I'm doing the best I can to exemplify and give that example for you and for the world, but at the same time, I'm still a person. So how much better is God? Because if this is the kind of gift I can give, how much more can a perfect father give?
That's good.
And it's hard to me. It's that idea. I got caught in this phase of if I could just make it until, if I could just get them to sleep through the night, and I could get more than just a couple hours of sleep, if I could just get him moving and crawling so he's not clung to me all the time. If I could just get to here, I'll catch my breath and it'll get easier. And look, my oldest is 8, so I don't have a lot of the wisdom of them being bigger, but I have caught on really quick to be like, I don't think you ever get there. Like a 3-hour old is hard, and a 3-day old was hard, and a 3-week old, and a 3-month old, and my 3-year old is hard. And so I'm sure then a 13-year old is hard. And then you having a 30-year old, I'm sure, is hard. And so the secret is to let go of this idea of, and when I say it's gonna get better, don't then be like, bum, bum, bum. It's never gonna get better. But it's literally, how are you looking at it? Because when I gave birth to kids, I didn't look at it going, here's the little things I made that I'm now supposed to disciple. Woohoo! I'm gonna be the example of God to them. I'm their first glimpse at what God is.
That is so. That is so good. And Lisa, I bet me and you are on the same train of thought right here, because I'm not saying that our parents got this wrong. And so I carefully share this because I don't feel like, I just think it was the time, the culture, because back at that time, the preaching was very fire and brimstone, and in your homes, it was very fire and brimstone. And it wasn't just our home, it was every home. And so that's why I don't, want anybody to feel like I'm talking terrible about our parents. But I have a perception of God that he is this, don't you do that, And so that is something I'm working very hard on overcoming. And I've never stopped and thought about how we are the front line for our children of a gracious and merciful God. And Gabe might kill me for sharing this story, but a couple of months ago, he was driving my husband's truck. He pulled out of the garage and he cut it too close, and now we have this nice white racing stripe from the paint going down the side of my husband's truck. And growing up, Shane was very bearish. He was a gruff man, and not me growing up, but our children growing up. He was a gruff man. And so when it happened, Shane was just very, well, things happen and it's all going to be okay. And for weeks, Gabe kept saying, what is wrong with him? When is he just going to yell at me? And I just kept telling him, he's not the same man. God has done a work in his life. He's not the same man. And I told Gabe, I said, God is a God of grace and mercy. And your father is just being a father of grace and mercy. And I'm going to be honest with you, I had never put the two together until you were talking, that's what we're called to do. And Gabe's a grown man. It never stops us being God to our children.
Yeah. And that's exactly where I was going with that when we started talking at the same time. And yeah, I mean, it never gets easier, or I don't want to say, there's always challenges until the day we're not on this earth, to not be that example is, we're always going to be here to be the sounding board and point you to scripture, or let's say, hey, let's pray about it. And that's where I find myself is like, well, I've messed up so much when they were little, but listening to you talk now, it's instead of me looking back of what I didn't do, look at what am I doing now for my grown children. Back when they were little, it was more of the harsh hand of discipline instead of discipleship. Yeah, I messed up there, but now let's change that to be so they're the parents like you're talking about, to where now they're discipling their children,
Right.
and bringing up.
And I think that opens the conversation for people mine and Lisa's age who are with older kids, grown kids, and grandkids, is that it's not even too late for us.
Right. It's not.
Is that, we have an opportunity to write it on our adult children's hearts and our grandchildren, and come alongside our kids who have kids and support them as they're trying to raise these disciples.
And I think with that, that just still hits that it never stops, and it never stops, and it never ends. Is, I mean, I think a lot of people struggle with this because they look like you've got to hold the line. But I mean, I think one of the most humblest things you can do is crouch down to your 3-year-old and be like, that was wrong and I'm sorry. I cannot believe that I just did that. We're not supposed to be yelling. We're not supposed to be doing that. And I did that. And that was wrong. And I'm working on it. And I'm trying. And so it's, if you've got a 3-year-old, then I think that's the standard. But I also think you've got a 13-year-old or a 30-year-old. I mean, that's that idea of, it makes me think of Micah 6, when it's like, be joyful always, pray continuously, and give thanks in all circumstances. And I mean, the Bible does have discipline and does have consequences for things, but that's why Jesus came. And
Mm.
so to me, it's almost like then the why are we raiding over our children with such an Old Testament mentality when
Ooh,
both are there for a purpose and for a reason?
I've never thought about it like that. I've never thought about keeping the law over my children, but not the salvation at the same time.
And that might be where some of our struggles have been trying to figure this out, is that was the culture of keeping the line, keeping the law, and me getting caught up of making sure that they do everything right. So over here, they're not being talked about or looked at, or, because till this day, I have to say, to this day, I laugh about it now, but at the time it was not funny, was sitting in church and somehow Sam was on the floor playing in the pew, and I'm talking split second like this. He was up under the pew all the way to the front, up at the top, and, standing there saying hello to everybody. Of course, I'm mortified, more worried about, well, what are people going to think versus, hey, yeah, we don't do that in church. We need to be quiet, but also looking at it, church is fun. You know what I'm saying? Does that even make sense? Because,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
for us, it was you didn't run in church, you didn't make loud noises, you didn't, going to church was a dun 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 dun. And then can you
Mm-hmm.
remember running around the sanctuary when it was just us, Lori, because we weren't
Oh,
supposed to run in church
absolutely.
because we were told not to run in church, so we would do it when nobody was there.
Like
But
every preacher's kid should do.
Hey, I'm a preacher's grandkid, and I still bounced over some pews when no one else was there. You know what I mean? I still had full roost of the place. And I think the hard with that, though, is with what you said of you're so worried of like, it's going to look like I'm not doing a good job.
yeah.
This is going to reflect that I'm not being successful in what I'm supposed to be doing with them. But with my analogy, how often do we run rampant with God? And he's
Mhm.
not like, yeah, not that one, not that one.
How many times do I
And
have to go over this with her, huh?
and I think my husband gets so cracked up at me because it's almost like now that I recognize that, to me it's everywhere I look. Because I'll be like, oh, Moses, God told him to go do this, and Moses said he was scared, and God was like, but I'll be with you. I'll even direct your mouth. And Moses like, I'm still so scared. Can I bring a friend? And in my mind, I'm like, the Lord Himself will guide your mouth, but you can't go without a buddy. Like, are you kidding me? But then I'm like, I probably did that last week. And how often did my own child do that in my own home?
Well, and I think that's the key to it, is that we think that our failure is final.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, because it does not matter. You've never gone too far. You've never messed up so much. Our failure is not final. And if I go back to the story about the truck with Shane and Gabe, if I'm just being honest, Shane having that bearish, gruff anger when y'all were younger, that could be a failure, but it wasn't final, because what God has done is He has turned that into a man who is very soft and kind, and whose grandkids they've got him in the palm of their hand. I mean, anything. But it's like, it's not final. Even if your kids are grown and you were saved in your 50s and you're listening to the podcast, the failure's not final, because God, you have an opportunity now to show your grown children the love of Christ. And I think that's what's so beautiful. As you're talking, I'm just like, it doesn't matter what you've ever gotten wrong. Even Moses phoned a friend. you know, and
It was like,
God,
I can't do this.
and God used him in such a mighty way. And newsflash, he used Aaron too. Okay. God didn't call Aaron, but he used Aaron. And so it's a God who is all no, no, no doesn't give up on us. I mean, that's not the kind of God who created us. And you made the statement, you gave birth to your disciples, and God gave birth to us, his disciples. And he is a good father, and our failure isn't final. It's just you've got to be willing to take the next step.
And I think the hard thing with that is it's so easy to immediately get caught up in the, okay, if I'm just now realizing this, then every moment backwards, what has gone on, what I can't undo that. But remembering with what you said, it's not final. And to me, my addition to that though is it's not about condemnation. Just like it, I don't think that that's the final act that should be with your children. That's not what this is about. It's not about condemning you, and it's not about how everything you've done from this point is bad. And it's not about how your way is bad, but about seeking his way, because his way is better. And just like I want you to show me how to be better, I'm then just in turn reflecting that on to my kids.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure and like, follow, and subscribe. And also check us out at therecoveringpreacherskids.com.